Hello and welcome to Don't Ask When. I'm Corey Max, CEO and Head of Design of LaForge Optical, and we're here on episode number 2, and we're talking prototypes today. So the reason we're talking prototypes is from time to time at events and also my emails, people send me messages like, hey Corey, what was your first prototype like? What were you guys doing in the early days? I have an idea for a product. I have no clue how you guys you know, went from what you guys had before to what we have now. So we're just going to tell you guys a little bit about not necessarily how we got started, that's for another episode, but just really focus on the product development part. People kind of wonder, man, these things seem to take a little bit longer. Also, you guys' stuff looks better than anyone else's out there, which, first of all, thank you for the people that think that. But let's just get right into this. How about that? So when we first got started with the project, it was called Mirage 2. And Mirage 2 was all about making a basically a smart home that could follow you around everywhere. So if you had these glasses on and you're having a house party or something, you're having a much better time than other people did. Clearly, no one's shown up to a house party with this, so let me explain what this thing is. This is the very first prototype that we made, and what we did is we took a pair of glasses, or sunglasses from Walgreens, and we took a bunch of parts from SmartFun, and we found a wholesale optics distributor in Pennsylvania, and we built this in about 2 weeks. So it took us 2 weeks to design, source, and manufacture this thing. The way this works is very simple. First of all, it's just a proof of concept. We knew at the very beginning it wasn't going to look like this. But what we decided to do is this. We said we need to be able to have this communicate with a smartphone because we knew that phones had a much bigger processor and a lot more space to work with, and they were ubiquitous. And we need to be able to push data to this and also have it be visible at the same time. So we wrote up a very simple Android app. And we used a bunch of Twitter's APIs. And so anytime you tweeted an account, it would make this screen light up, and you're able to read the tweet. So that there shows at the lowest level how this system works, and we actually carried that part completely through with all of our later prototypes. But it's very simple. But of course, as you can see here, and we'll show in some other shots, this prism has some sharp edges. If you wear this thing too long, it'll kind of want to fall off your face. And also, this is nowhere near waterproof or visually acceptable. I do know that some people would love to have this thing. Some people even tried to buy it off of me. But this is actually where the company got its start. So a little over a year later, we did finally end up getting some investment, thank goodness, to start the company known as LaForge Optical. So LaForge Optical, even though you guys may have heard about some of our previous offerings before we were incorporated with the ISIS project and some other things, the company actually didn't really get started until November of 2014 when we closed on our first $1 million round. And with that funding, we built a sexier version of that. So we just said, hey, let's go frameless, let's push it. We had a group of people in the UK, the company called TTP, the Technology Partnership, make this for us in about 10 days. And again, this first one that we built, this was a couple $100. This one I'm wearing on my face was $15,000. And this prototype here runs Android natively because we took some of Vuzix's stuff and we took a pair of Tag Heuer frames and we Frankensteined them together. We also cut our optics into the lenses and made it much smaller and much more crisp. These you had to squint to see it, and of course, there's nothing really magical about these guys. But with these over here, you don't have to squint. It's crystal clear. Some would say the image is almost a little too bright, but it let people really know about our technical prowess, and it really helped increase our credibility. And this prototype actually got us another, what was it? It got us another like $1.3 million in funding to continue the project. So as you can see here, we've got some of the optics cut in. That of course is something that we didn't have later on. But again, this is how you go and improve a product. You start with something with a bunch of crazy wires hanging off. Then you put those things in a slightly smaller box. You have things hanging off a lens. Now it's cut into a lens. People are getting a much better idea of what it is we're trying to produce. Shortly thereafter, we made a bunch of form studies. And one of the form studies was this here. This is the Mr. DJ frame style. And for those people who had made pre-orders back when pre-orders were open, there was also Infinite Loop and a couple other names that, strange enough, I can't recall right now. I think it was a Heartbreaker was one, and the other one was Half and Half. So what this was about was this. When we had designed this, we already knew what our circuit board was going to be. We had it completely designed. We even had a few of them built. I think we had 10 or 15 circuit boards built at that point. We knew that we were going to be running off a USB Type-C in the corner, in the end piece of the temple, and we knew we were also going to be using a 3.5 millimeter or aux port as well. And we made these. We made a video. It went crazy viral. A lot of people liked it. Some people thought that we were putting them on. Can understand both of those. But what this prototype was really about was to say, this is the art of possible. We can actually make something that looks like this. What do you think about it? Also notice that we did get rid of all the lines in the lenses as well. We got rid of the lines because, one, we want to be able to add prescriptions to it. Two, those lines, when you get in the sun, make this really crazy, prismatic or psychedelic, sort of effect, which is, great for nocturnal Underland or Baychella or whatever. Definitely great for EDC. But for people going about their everyday lives, that's going to be really distracting. Also notice the thickness of this lens. These lenses here, we couldn't make them any thinner than about 3.5 millimeters at that point. But of course, with time, we got that down too. So as word about these got around, we were looking at comments and also looking at the emails we were getting. And people said they didn't really like these sort of square, knobby things on the side. And so I said, you know what? I kind of don't like them either. Let's figure out a way to get rid of them. So from that, what we did, and we did this in 2017, was we made a different prototype, one that took everything that we had learned previously. It had a few more enhancements that were built into it, and it also worked. So we went from the first one, which was our proof of concept and works like prototype, to a really, really nice looking, refined, looks like prototype. And we had to merge those together eventually. And so this is what we came up with. Now, if you guys are like me saying, man, Corey, that looks nothing like the first two, it kind of looks a little worse, guess what? We're in agreement. So what happened with these was we did thin some things out, and we were trying to get things as small as we possibly could. But what we realized is once we got to this certain level of thinness, we kind of had trouble hiding some of the electronic components. So if you notice, things don't stick out as far on the sides. But what we do have is this little part here that we kind of didn't do the best job of designing around. And again, these are early stage prototypes. I mean, if you look at prototypes for other products, you'll see that they looked a lot worse, almost unrecognizable from the final product. And yeah, we are going in the right direction, but for us, this wasn't something that was acceptable either. We also had discovered that the way that we wanted to attach the frames and the lenses together was creating some alignment issues. And so we had to go back to the drawing board with our optics system and basically make it to where, okay, if we're going to go with these new optics that aren't as obvious on the edge, we're going to have to find a new way to secure all this stuff together. And so what we did is we stopped at that point putting the display itself in the frame, and instead we actually started putting the display next to the lens. It's not a semantical difference. It's the difference between you sitting on these and they working, and you sitting on these and they not working at all. So they not working, these not working at all. So this is something to say, okay, this is a good first attempt. We've got a battery in here. We've got circuit boards. We've got things communicating with smartphones. We're able to do this stuff. You can charge it. But aside from the general roughness of any prototype with the tape and the rubber band and the super sexy and trendy hot glue on it, we knew we had to do a couple more iterations. So in early this year, 2018, we made this, a new looks like prototype that was really focused on how do we get rid of the visual mass at the edge of the lens. And it basically involved us looking at the project a little bit differently. We're not going to say exactly what it is we did. It's a trade secret for those of you guys who are getting Alpha Rev 0.3, which we're talking about next. You'll see exactly how we got the trick across. But what we decided to do was say, hey, how could we make these things look virtually indistinguishable? So what we did differently with these is that we used off-the-shelf frame components. And the trick to these is that we ran a thin flex cable behind these. And that really gave us the form factor that we wish we had when we made these back in the early days. So there's a lot of difference between these prototypes here. So for instance, these prototypes here that I'm wearing, they only cost us about $80 to build, comparing with its sort of predecessor here that cost us about $10,000 to build this. And we built about 4 or 5 of these before we just called it quits on this sort of design theory. And then finally what we have is a working version of what we had, of what I was just wearing. This is Alpha Rev 0.3. We tried 0.1 and 0.2 earlier in the year. We had some issues with how we were securing these together. Again, want to make it very clear. These are alpha prototypes. This isn't the final product. But as you can see, with a little over 3 years in existence at LaForge Optical and some funding, we were able to go from this to what I'm wearing here today. So you have something that has prescription lenses, it's lightweight. So these glasses here weigh less than a pair of glasses from Warby Parker, as well as these fancy French Sabine B glasses that I'm known to be wearing. What you do with these here is very simple. You just touch the touchpad and you'll see a white rectangle, and others will see something that we put in front of the white rectangle. So in this case, it might be Yoda or an Orca from Free Willy. And what we're doing with these is these are the glasses for Experiment 3. Experiment 3 is something that I don't recall talking about, but I may have in the forums because people, try to get as much information out of me as possible on there. But Experiment 3 is about the location of these optics and making sure that we've put in the right location based on how far apart your eyes are. After this, we go into Experiment 4, which is mostly based on the user experience and the UI, basically saying, hey, we're going to be testing out different font sizes. And then there's another version of the alpha that comes out after that for Experiment 5, and that's really about pairing the eyewear to the phone and what that process is about. So again, this pretty much wraps up this episode of Don't Ask When. I thought it was pretty cool to let people know what we've been working on over the past 3 years and what preceded the company 18 months before it was incorporated, when it was still a project in my living room. So we hope that a lot of you guys really enjoyed what I had to show you here today. What we're really showing you guys is, hey, one, it's not easy to make products that are lightweight, aesthetic, and actually perform. And what we're doing in a series of iterations is creating, a sort of transformational value in the product offerings that we're going to have in the future. We do have some more really interesting announcements coming up later this year. And that basically concludes it. If you like what I had to say, tap that like button. If you don't like what I had to say or feel like I'm putting you on, hit the subscribe button and then really, really hard, almost just bam into that like button on whatever platform you're looking at us at. If you have any questions, just send them to don'task@laforgeoptical.com, and then we'll feature some of these in future episodes. We're here for you. See you next time. Bye.